Welcome again to Postcard. Leigh Banks over there in Slovakia, and it's starting to warm up, so he's happy. He's on his balcony. He's found a shady spot where he can see his computer and do all his work out there. Is that a secret?
Not really, except I'm sitting in my lounge with the blinds down and it's freezing.
Well, we do a test before going live, of course, and he had a halo around him and he was bright and it would have put you off your breakfast. So we thought, let's darken it, let's put a blind down. He's still bright.
I'm very bright, actually, yeah, considering I didn't get to bed till 5 o'clock this morning. But Slovakia has the most bizarre weather system ever. We've had, last week we had 3 days of tropical summer, and then we had 2 days with snow, and today it's like dreary Manchester, just grey and rainy.
Oh my goodness me.
That's part of what we love about it. It's just lovely in a funny way.
Well, we don't do grey and misery. This is the problem with Manchester, bless it. But I'll give you some unusual facts, Leigh. Marbella, where we usually broadcast from, of course. We're in Portugal at the moment, as you can see. But Marbella has 36 inches of rain a year, and Manchester has 35. The difference, of course, is for the other 300 and odd days, it's sunny, and in Manchester, it's grey, bless its heart.
I do miss Manchester. I'm never going to return to the UK. I am now a dyed-in-the-wool expat. But I do miss Manchester, and I miss the greyness of it. I miss the rain. I miss the pavement shining like silver, and I miss the buildings, all the old buildings and everything. I have a lot, and I miss John Willie Lee's bitter as well.
Yes, well, you do. There's certain things that are great and that you can have. But let's be honest, Leigh, if everything was great where we are, Portugal, Spain, Slovakia, whatever, the whole world would come, wouldn't they?
Well, I know, that's a funny thing. Actually, I have to say, when I first came to Slovakia, one reason we moved out here is because it was all so cheap. Now, we do live in the heart of the city of Postcard, but really, Slovakia isn't a cheap place to live anymore.
No.
You know, it's getting up there with a par to Manchester and London, not London particularly, but say Manchester and Birmingham. And whether Slovakia is going to have a major crash because of coronavirus is not really debatable, because the banks have been getting people to buy apartments and giving them phenomenally cheap loans based on 2 wages generally. And so the house prices and the apartment prices have risen hysterically, absolutely outrageously. So an apartment here is now the equivalent to buying an apartment in Britain. Now, with people not going to work, with people not actually being able to earn money, then there is going to be an amazing crash, and that is an absolute tragedy.
Well, this is the downside maybe of the EU. The EU are struggling at the moment. As we mentioned last week, Italy is not a fan of the EU. They've not helped them out. There are stories coming out, alarming stories, that masks were being sent to Italy, and France intervened and kept them from themselves. Everybody is thinking of themselves. The European Union, therefore, does not work. It's been sold right from the beginning, of course, as a trade deal. That's nonsense. It's always been the ultimate United States of Europe. That's what's behind it all. But it's not working.
Well, it has. When it came into being, which I can't remember really what it was, but it's 30, 40 years ago, isn't it? And the debate about whether it works and whether it's the benefit that it is expressed to be has gone on since day one. And people have said that it is wrong for us to be ruled by an unelected parliament and to have to pay for it. It's a bit of madness, really. You know, our trade deal's going to stop just because of that. Our BMW not going to want to sell any cars in Britain anymore. Mercedes, Benz, all these other companies. Why are all these trade deals going to end? Why are people not going to want to buy what we send? Basically?
Well, you know, you're right, and I think the penny's dropped. But now they're going back on the old thing, of course. It stops us having a third world war. No, it doesn't. Trade deals stop you having a third world war because you're so dependent on another nation. And I'll move swiftly on that from there because we've got lots to discuss today.
But very briefly, we've not left the UN.
Well, there is another organisation that we could spend a full 12 months on. But I tell you what.
Just before we move on. Beard.
Oh, no, this is important. Now, the wife is very worried about that beard, and she finds it tickles. Is that true?
It's a different way of looking at it. I suppose there is an old phrase about tickling a trout.
You can't say that, Leigh. She'll object to that.
Can't leave me.
Yes, you can say things like that when you're housebound, as we all are. Look, let's seriously talk about being housebound because people now are getting a bit chivvy about it. There's a lady in Germany, and this is quite frightening actually. She's a medic and at the same time a journalist, and she's been kicking off about being housebound like the rest of Europe. And the authorities have got her. They've put her in a psyche ward. Now this is just like the Gulag. It's just like what China are up to. If you say something wrong, you're off ski.
Why, what are the reasons she's been, I've got to be honest, I've not followed this story very closely. I know about it, but I would want to know exactly what she's been put in a psychiatric ward for. What did she say? Is it just, she said, I don't want to be in lockdown, I think it's terrible. That's not an arrestable offence. What she actually said?
Well, she is an activist. Now, that's the favourite phrase. And maybe she's overstepped the mark. But you've got to be overstepping the mark at times. You don't deserve to be put away.
Of course you do. Wait until you read the piece that I'm doing for the Leigh G. Banks Preservation Society, which will go out hopefully later today. It asks a very simple question, and I think it's a very important question. We praise Captain Tom for the wonderful work he's done, the millions upon millions that surprisingly he's raised for the NHS, but we also ask a very straightforward question. Since Boris went into his own personal isolation, why has our government fallen apart? It's a rudderless government that's doing nobody any good. And why is all of the world saying we need to get back to normal as soon as possible? Let's just ask this question on the Preservation Society. Why do we want to go back to normal? Why do we not accept that normality has polluted our skies, our rivers, our waters, destroyed and given us all sorts of terrible diseases that quite feasibly this disease is created because of it? There are alternative ways of carrying on an economic world, ones that are far fairer than the one we have at the moment.
Am I talking to Greta, reborn?
Has she got a beard?
Well, no, I won't say it.
It's no, I just think, that we live in a world that is based on a form of economy that just perpetuates itself. We are based on money. Our survival is based on money. Now, that's something that we can't get rid of. Bitcoin's never going to take over, and also that's a form of money anyway. But there are different ways of approaching this world and the way it should. And I'm not talking about communism, I'm not talking about barbarianism, I'm talking about a fair economy where people are looked after fairly. And that doesn't mean robbing rich people and taking money off rich people to give to the poor. It's just a way of balancing things out, controlling the way things are spent to create the NHS so it's workable, get rid of the people at the top of that The managers, we don't need managers, we need doctors. Doctors know how to cure things. Put doctors in charge of it, pay them well. And it's all this way of just living from this. People are afraid, like you say here, of losing their homes. People are afraid of losing the cars. And it's all because what our basic economy is based on is building things. How many things do you want? I've got thousands of things. How many things do we need? Let's get rid of our things and get back to a real way of life.
Well, that's interesting because, of course, China's coming in for some flack. And I've got to be honest, I'm not very sympathetic because I know what's going on behind the scenes. And recently, whether you've come across this or not, Leigh, yet, but you will soon, if you're a foreigner in China, you're at risk. If you're a black foreigner in China, you're at double risk. Because what's been going on, of course, is that they've turned their target to America. We didn't start this virus. It was the Americans. They brought it in, anti-American, and this is how you manage a communist state. But are not going to get away with it because people are now chivying off everywhere about China, and probably justly. I've got a photograph here that says it all, and it was taken on the 28th January. And it shows there two people almost cuddling or headbutting. I don't know, but they're in very close confines. One's Mr. Tedros. He's head of the WHO. And the chap he's talking to is the Chief Minister of Health of China. Where's the social distancing there? Let me tell you another fact, Leigh. The fact is that this has been going on from September. It's been covered up by the Chinese from September and October. Those two gentlemen knew all about it by the end of January, and that's how they're behaving. It is disgraceful.
I tend to, I understand exactly where you're coming from. The World Health Organization has become Chinese-centric. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And there are so many questions that need asking of that organization, and heads I'm sure will roll because of what's gone on. But just to open it up a little bit, last week Trump decided he wasn't going to fund WHO anymore. Now, seriously, is this the time to start taking one of the only rafts we've got in these circumstances to task and to try and bankrupt it and stop it being able to do anything? Surely, like our government here in the UK, sorry, their government in the UK.
Yes.
What they have done and what mistakes they've made, yeah, there's all sorts of reasons that things, you know, they were coming at the beginning, they were coming out of Brexit, they were coming out of an election, they were coming out of new leadership, they were coming out of floods. So the focus was a bit dissipated, but certainly since things have got under control and Boris has been in hospital, there has to be an inquiry into the way Britain has handled this situation.
Indeed. And a lot of other countries. It is a bit of a no-win situation for a government, to be honest. It's never had anything like this for a long time, certainly not within living memory. 1918, and don't forget 1918, it wasn't the Spanish flu stage 1 that killed, it was stage 2. Beware everybody before relaxing your guard. It's stage 2, if it happens, that kills you. It's a biggie. So it is a no-win situation. But Boris has been attacked. Oh, he went home to see his pregnant wife. He should have been hands at the wheel. Well, government really doesn't work like that. Yes, there is a man at the helm, but there's an awful lot of civil servants behind that man, and they have absolutely failed Britain and France and Italy. And, you know, they get away with it, the civil servants. The fall guys are always the politicians, probably deserving it in a lot of cases. But bear in mind the civil servants, job for life, fat pension, very nice.
Absolutely. But also, the thing that bothered me when Boris was attacked for going to Chequers to recuperate,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask one straightforward question. How many other people who have had this illness, caught this virus, and suffered really badly and been at death's door, have actually gone back to their office to recuperate? Which is what Boris would have been doing if he'd gone back to number 10.
Yes. This virus is awful. Our youngest son has had it, and he's only mid-30s. It is an absolute brute. Let's not hide behind facts and figures for once. It is a brute. And he went back early, and of course, he finished up with a real severe throat infection. Lucky it wasn't sepsis. There's the big danger. No, if you've had it, you stay out of things for quite a long time.
And Boris is coming back, hopefully, certainly within the next 2 weeks. And maybe that's too early. But in a way, it either shows the calibre of the man, depending on what your political point of view is, but it certainly shows the calibre of the people below him. That a man has to get out of his sickbed to get back in control of a major crisis. There are a lot of things that have got to be asked about the way this has gone, particularly in the last few weeks.
Indeed. Well, the other answer for that, of course, and I'm going to get in trouble once again, is if Mr. Corbyn got back in power. Just imagine where Diane Abbott would be by now.
It's true. Where has Corbyn been? If you forgive the pun. Where has Mr. Corbyn been? What's he had to say? Not much at all, really. And as the opposition, he should be making, although he's out of power now, obviously, but he's still a powerful political figure. What's Keir Starmer had to say? Not a great deal. He said we need an inquiry. Isn't that surely the retreat point for anything to do with the socialist powers in Britain? We need an inquiry. No, we don't. We need action. Have the inquiry after we've had the action.
Well, there is a worry in all this because certain countries, and I know you've mentioned this about Singapore, they've had a bit of wave too because they've got a lot of immigrants coming in the country. They're close together. That's how they are and work. People criticize New York the whole time, but that is, again, people close together. You look at the rural regions and they're not affected as much as the cities, and it's close contact. So somebody's got to think of a way how to not close contact in cities, because as soon as they go back to work on the tube, on the bus, they're going to pick it up.
That is the worry, isn't it? And in Singapore, let's face it, it was being hailed as a country that got its coronavirus response right.
Yes.
The state said that they'd quashed the epidemic without any real strict lockdowns. It was testing people and widely isolating anyone who was found to have it. Then it was hit by a second wave. And since 17th of March, I'm obviously reading this now, Singapore number have confirmed, not reading it very well either, Singapore's number of confirmed coronavirus cases has grown from 266 to more than almost 6,000. That is a concern. That genuinely is a concern.
Well, everybody's eyes are on Sweden. This is a litmus test for most people. And they've let people go to restaurants, etc. And it's been they've advised the old people to stay at home when they can. Good idea. But having said that, they've been very liberal. And I've seen the graph this very day. It's coming back. And I hope it doesn't go like Singapore phase 2. It's not the panacea, Sweden, after all.
No, it is a worrying thing. Like in Britain, the herd mentality we had at the beginning, it wouldn't have worked. And yet we're going to be herding people together in the UK very, very soon. It looks like in a couple of weeks. It's being described as a traffic light system where, for some reason, I can't catch on to this at all, really. Maybe I'm just being thick. Well, the first people to be allowed out are children. That seems funny. Let the children go out. It's like kicking your children out. It's like taking a bird into a mine to see if there's any gas, in a way. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But,
well, it's a bit bizarre. We all know that schools are absolute incubators for germs. But don't forget, they've kept a lot of schools open because of essential workers. Some of those workers are perhaps not as essential as they make out. But like Spain, where the women's lobby is so strong, and it is in the UK as well, that's an influence, sadly.
Is it just women? What do you mean? Women want to get the children out of the house?
Probably.
But it's then the second wave of restaurants and things like that. The red light is going to be put in front of 70 people over the age of 70. That means they're possibly not going to actually be able to go out for a year. That's a travesty. That's an absolute travesty. There are other ways of handling this situation than that. It's
indeed. Look, we've done the virus. We're going to do it again, no doubt, next week. We hope and pray that somebody finds a solution. And lastly, on the virus, there's this wonderful thing that I can never pronounce: hydrochloroquine. Well, near enough. That, together with another drug, does seem to be efficacious. And we've mentioned it last week. We'll mention it again. It seems to be being put down. Now, Mr. Trump, of course, is dead keen on this drug. Other people are dead keen. There's a very famous French scientist that Macron has shut up and said, keep quiet about this. Then he appeared on television and got Macron into trouble because he had the stats that showed it did work. So Macron had to agree to it, but only for people in the armed forces. And it's done a lot of good for people in the armed forces. Now, what's behind this? Some people are saying maybe it's the conspiracists. Well, what do you expect with Big Pharma wanting to make a fortune out of inventing a drug that's going to lead them into wealth? Because don't forget, this drug for treating malaria costs about €1. They're not going to get rich out of that. Now, that could be conspiratorial, but it could be correct.
In these circumstances, in this climate, I can basically forgive anybody for coming up with a conspiracy theory, because the simple fact is we aren't being given all the facts.
No,
we're not being allowed to know what's going on, so we can make an opinion, so we can decide for ourselves what the situation is. And conspiracy theories abound in these circumstances, and that isn't, for once, the fault of David Icke lookalikes.
There's a lot of them about.
Yes. Here's one thing: the Preservation Society. Go and have a look at it. It's really good. It's really interesting. It's called the Leigh Banks Preservation Society. Britain's beer, the beautiful, bland, warm, flat, incredibly gorgeous thing called beer in Britain. The one reason that I would ever consider going back to Britain, beer. John Willie Lee's, Joseph Holt's, Robinson's, everything. All these beers are going to waste in the cellars of pubs. Now, they've only got a life of a couple of months, different than lager and stuff. So we at the Leigh Banks Preservation Society are starting a campaign to get the pubs to give the beer for free to their regulars. It's already started in Scotland, where the pubs are going around leaving a couple of pints on the doorstep for the people who frequent their hostelries. And why aren't the rest of the pubs doing that? Why let it go off? Well, this is what we're talking about, barbarism. Now I've got a load of rotten beer in my cellar. Well, I'm not sharing it with you. Now go and get your own rotten beer. Well, you could give it away. You could do it for free. You could bring a bit of a smile to the faces of the world. We say free beer for Britain.
It won't work, Leigh. It's very simple. If you leave anything on a doorstep in Britain, a dog will lift its leg and flavour the whole thing. So forget that. I've got a more practical solution, and that is to use all these empty petroleum pipes that we don't need any more gas oil, and then pump this direct to Slovakia just for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm not being rude about Slovak beer, but it doesn't compare to Joseph Holt's.
No, they've not been as drunk as long, I know, over there. Listen, I'm going to have a go. Again, more trouble. Barclays Bank. We both had problems with banks. You've had problems with HSBC, and now we've got problems with Barclays. Here we are, locked down in Portugal, no brass. And I'm trying to get brass out of the United Kingdom Bank, Premier Bank, Barclays. My goodness me. So I get on the...
There is a phrase about Barclays that I can't remember. And if I did remember, I wouldn't be allowed to use it. But just think about it.
Begins with B, Barclays, yes. Right, well, it's impossible. You know what it's like going through ordeals on the phone, this telephone banking. And they ask you all the questions, including your inside leg measurement, and you think, oh, it's working out this, I'm getting there. And it was working out, and then I sinned. I was asked for my secret number, and I said, the number, and it's wrong, she said, triumphantly. I said, what do you mean it's wrong? She said, I said, it's right, I can remember it. I can't remember many things, but 4-figure numbers I can remember. There you go. She tells me you've got a special number for your app, for your ringing in, and for your computer banking. 3 special numbers. I didn't know that. So I failed. You've had it. Well, I can't do anything out here. I'm going to die. I've got no money. She wasn't interested. So
I know.
They couldn't care less. They've got this sheet of paper, as you know, Leigh. They've got these silly questions. I bank, sounds as though I've got a lot of money now. I bank all over Europe. I don't have any problems. They asked me 2 questions. Some of them asked me nothing. They recognise my voice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. You're going to get done, Mr. Bank, every now and again, but you'll cause yourself a lot more goodwill to get more money if you get more relaxed. In Britain, there must be more sharks and people that would have the banks to task and steal from them than anywhere else. Well, you'd think so. But the end of the story, very quickly, is that I'm still waiting for the money. I did get an apology and I got 50 quid, would you believe? But listen, it won't pay for the tranquilizers that I am now on, Leigh. It's that everybody has the same problem. It's not just us two. Why isn't something done? Because
banks have got a total control. You know, the basic thing with a bank is the reason they've got control over you is because they've got all your money.
Yes.
You know, it's as simple as that. They don't give you any interest on it. They don't give you any benefits to it. They do everything. And the most annoying part of it is when they do what they've done to you, what they did to me a couple of weeks ago, which is same thing, ask me a question. What's the telephone number that was attached to your account when you opened it? Well, I opened it 20 odd years ago, and I probably had 15 telephones by then. So I couldn't remember. I gave them the one I thought it was. They said, that's wrong. I said, oh, well, it must be this one. That one was right. They said, sorry, we could only accept your first answer.
That's it. They get you every time on that one. And you well know that the question I was asked, not by Barclays, another bank actually, in a similar situation. You opened your account, Mr. Hearth, in 1999. What was the first transaction you made? What?
I know, he's crazy. He's crazy. He's you know, the banks aren't run by Chris Tarrant and Jeremy Clarkson. He's not a game show. It's life and death for some people. All right, there are. I was locked out of banking on line, etc., and for telephone banking. There are ways around it, obviously, and I managed to get around it, but I'm still not able to do it. We're going to carry your story actually next week, and I'm going to go to the Banking Association and ask them directly, what is this game show mentality that you've now adopted towards your customers? And you are actually, what it is, in any other form, is robbery. Robbery is to deprive people of what is rightfully theirs. My money in that bank is rightfully mine, and they are deliberately depriving me of it and depriving you by saying, we're doing it for your own protection. No, you're not.
Exactly, you get that phrase all the time. It's for your protection. No, it's not.
No.
Right, we're going to move on. I'm going to give you another idea now. Well, it's not an idea. I know what you've been thinking this morning. It's called copyright. Now, before you start, mate, I've got to mention that I'm very ambivalent about copywriting, because I see somebody write a musical.
Yeah.
And it's the only musical they've ever written. Obviously, I'm not speaking about Andrew Lloyd, but they write one musical. They just do nothing else for the rest of their lives, and they are swimming in money. 50 years later, Mr. Cliff Richard wanted the law tightening up. It's got to be for 50, 60 years if you write. It's nonsense. And it's got to go to the children, the grandchildren. I would bring in a law, quite frankly, and say, yes, have your copyright for 5 years, then get off your backside and write another musical. Now, that is not what you are going to have a chat about. It's something a bit insidious.
It's, we're not going to name anybody or any organisation at this stage, although they will be named in the near future. The situation is very simple. There is somebody who runs a publication which has a number of people who have written for free for them. They've not paid them, they've written for free. And these people are now losing their copyright because this person has removed any identification marks from their material. That means that nobody knows who wrote it. But the publication he's using, he has copyrighted its content. That means that he's tried to copyright their work. Now, if he was just doing that generally, it wouldn't be that strong a case. But we have seen documents where it says that he intends to monetize this publication. Now, it is a complete and clear contravention of copyright law to take any identification mark of somebody's work and use it to make yourself money. That is one of the worst and for somebody to actually do this to 14 people who wrote on a regular basis for this publication for free, and were told at the time that the copyright would remain with them, that there was no invasion of copyright. To do this, to make yourself a few bob, is disgusting. We're going to expose it.
Does it give anything away? And I don't think it does, that this is not in the United Kingdom. Is it easier for people to get up to shenanigans when they're abroad?
I think the copyright laws are pretty much the same throughout the world. As a writer, I can't really say that I agree with you on your attitude towards copyright. I can see where you're coming from, but my archive of work is my livelihood. Certain pieces of work I've been publishing for the last 25 years, some of them longer, actually 30 years. and with a quick slight alteration to a headline or a picture, I sell those. Some of the stories I've sold 10, 15, 20 times over. And that is we were talking before about things. That's my thing. That's what I create. And therefore, that's what I try to make money out of. Therefore, to take that away from me, it's like, taking away from somebody who builds cars. Yeah, you can take the car, you can buy the car off them, but you can't take the copyright to the design or the whatever things you do to copyright a car. You can't take that. And to take people's copyright, a writer's copyright away from them, is shameful. If you get very lucky and you make a fortune out of something you've written, I've not. I've just written that much that I get by all right. It's
no, I wasn't meaning you specifically, Leigh, on that. That it's the abusers. Let me call out some abusers, and that's the friendly lawyer, especially in the States. They get a film that's more than 50 years old, and they rebrand, if you like, The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz 2000, stroke of a pen, and then everybody's got to pay a fortune for showing The Wizard of Oz, which means a lot of people won't see a blooming good film. That's chicanery. It's lawyers being clever.
I agree with you. And in where you say perhaps it should be copyrighted for 5 years, my attitude is maybe it should be copyrighted for 100 years, because my legacy is what I want to leave to my children. And if the book, which I've now completed and I'm about to look for a publisher for, does take off and sells, then that is my legacy to my children. And I've been lucky, and not many people can say this, but I've been lucky enough to have made a living and done quite well as a writer all my working life. That's all really I've ever done. And my writing is my legacy to this world.
Leigh G. Banks is going to live for 100 years. So he thinks. Leigh, we've come to the end again. It's gone all too quickly. And we've had a good moan. But we're going to go out, and I'm going to give the last word to you. And I know that you're not going to be able to answer this question, but give us a little bit of hope. There's too much misery going on because of the corona. You can understand it. Yeah. But what can you honestly bring out of what the state we're in? And have you got something that you can give us some hope about, and something that somebody should get off the proverbial again and change? Something simply that governments can do to make our life a little bit happier.
Well, let me put it this way, right? Wine is said to give you wisdom. Beer is said to make you a free thinking, affable, charming, witty person. Water is full of bacteria. Now, we all know what bacteria gives you. So I would rather carry on drinking wine, drinking beer, and talking instead of drinking water and being full of it.
This is advice that is not to be recommended, ladies and gentlemen.